It's somebody that's being projected on me by the illusion. So now the illusion fulfills that by saying, what you are is aham kara. The very word aham means I, and kara means karata, I am the doer, and karana, I am the cause of everything going on in my life. Yes?
I'm not sure if you explain what Maya is.
Maya is illusion.
I mean, to like material energy.
Oh, Maya is God has so many different energies that work in so many different ways. And the energy which functions as the manifestation of this external world is as wholesale called Maya. But Maya functionally is this avidya that I'm speaking about. This absence of knowledge. Right? So that ahamkara, I am the doer and the cause of everything that's going on, is really a false narrative. It's a false impression. Because the very identity that I was offered is really not me. You understand? So now in practical terms, breaking that down, if anyone has ever seen a movie or gone to a play, you watch the movie or you watch the drama on a big screen TV or a big screen at the movies, and you make emotional investment to the characters in the story that's going on. Even though you're not in that movie, and we all know in real consciousness it's Hollywood, green screen, etc., do we make emotional investment in the content of the movie or not?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's why movies are $1 million industry. Because people go and they get an emotional content or an emotional involvement in it, and that's somehow satisfying to people, right? So, in the same way, on the flat screen TV of consciousness, which is called the chitta, in every being, there's a subtle sheet of consciousness, which is called the chitta. That narrative that the illusory energy or Maya is showing on that screen called the chitta. Every soul standing behind that chitta, situated in its original consciousness, is looking at that drama on the chitta and making a vicarious identification with the false character that's been offered by the illusion. Understand? So now looking at that false character and making that identification, everything that character, which is not us, goes through, we vicariously identify with and subsequently experience happiness, distress, this is good, this is bad, etc., etc. So this whole drama that's playing out has been playing out in a cyclic way since time without any beginning. So every single body, every single identity that we've had from time without any beginning has essentially been a false narrative. Now, some of the bodies are great, right? Especially when you come to the stage where you have kind of elevated consciousness, like in this grouping here, and we're able to look at life in a whole different perspective, then, oh, wonderful, this body is not bad. But this was not the beginning. Obviously, there's been evolution, right? And there are people, which you can go any place, anytime, and see that there's not so much evolution, and you can look and say, how much suffering is there? How much suffering is there? Because there isn't any evolution in consciousness. So this false narrative that's being played out, the only way to break that narrative is if somehow or another another narrative can be given in place of it that's powerful enough to break that cycle. So there's one verse which is written in the ancient scripture Srimad Bhagavatam, and it says, Anadi avidya yuktasya. The connection of the souls with this illusion is anadi. It's from time without any beginning, as I've already mentioned. Purushasha atma vedanam. And because of that, everybody has no idea actually who I really am, what is my real duty, what is my real relationship with God. After that it says, Swato na sambhavati anya. Swato means by yourself. Swato na sambhavati. By yourself you cannot break the connection with that false narrative. Alone it's impossible to break the connection with that false narrative. Why? Because Maya offers another feature. It is called Abhinivesh. Abhinivesh means, I'm giving you an example, my granddaughter, she's in iPad consciousness at this point. Right? So she gets the iPad, turns it on, she's all the codes, everything, how to find what she wants. While she's watching the iPad, if you call, Naya, no answer. Naya, are you okay? No answer. Until you get in the room and you get up close, Naya, boom. The connection between her absorption in that iPad and everything else, then it's broken. In the same way, the souls in this world, having been identified with the drama being played out on the chitta from time without beginning, cannot break that until and unless some powerful sound enters the consciousness and has the ability to break the absorption. That sound is called Shabda Brahman. Shabda Brahman means it cannot be a sound that's part of the world, because you hear so many sounds in the world, right? But none of them break the illusion. I've heard great I was a traveling musician for many years. I've heard great bands. Yeah. And even I've heard, bands that have very inspiring, uplifting content in their music, whether it's in, new age or jazz or whatever it might be, very uplifting content, right? Still, my absorption in the world is not broken by that. But as soon as a person hears sound, which is transcendent to the narrative, to the illusory narrative, when he hears that or she hears that sound, then the connection is broken. At that time, when the connection first breaks, a question arises in the heart. That question becomes, if I'm not a participant in the false narrative, who am I? Ke ami. Who am I then? So now, wanting to understand who I am genuinely, a sort of introspection starts to take place from that point. But the introspection is not an easy road either. Even when the absorption in the false narrative is broken, it's not that we do a 180 and say, oh, now I know who I am, everything is all good. Actually, it becomes a process to break that absorption because it's been there from time without any beginning. It's just like when you go to sleep at night and the sleep is exceptionally good, right? Therefore, some people, we have to use a alarm clock to break it. Because if it depended on your own just waking up, well, it's not going to happen. You understand? So similarly, the alarm clock that breaks the illusion of this world is called Harikatha or Harinam. That Harikatha and that Harinam does not have to strictly be in any particular tradition. This is the amazing thing. If you hear the glories and the name of God in any tradition, it will have the effect of breaking that illusory narrative. If you give emotional investment to that name and to that narration in that culture of divinity. Right? So it's not exclusive to Vedic culture or to Krishna consciousness. So I'm using Krishna consciousness because I'm familiar with that. So when a person hears the divine name of Radha and Krishna, and they hear the narratives of their pastimes, when that abhinavesh or absorption in the false narrative is broken, gradually there's a turning from one thing to another. When the consciousness begins to shift to the spiritual paradigm, at that time, automatically all of the things that plagued the soul by making it attached to illusion gradually begin to fade away on their own, just as if you have a light that has a dimmer switch. When you turn the light on, it's dim. As you turn it up brighter and brighter and brighter, eventually full illumination takes place. In that same way, when the false narrative is broken and we begin the process of turning the dimmer switch up of our spiritual practice, gradually it gets lighter and lighter until there's full illumination. In Krishna consciousness, the practice that's used is called sadhana. This sadhana has elements. So the sadhana begins with a practice called Mangala Arati. Mangala means very auspicious, Arati means actually worship. Comes from the root Aradhana, which means to worship. So I wanted to speak, my actual topic tonight, I was giving a preface, but the actual topic is on the nature of the morning program that's given in order to help us make that transition from the false narrative to the real narrative. So in Krishna consciousness, or in Bhakti Yoga, every morning during the hours between 4:30 and 6, roughly, devotees arise and they begin a process of meditation. Not a process of songs, really. We've always thought it to be I'm singing my songs. Guru Astaka, Mangalarti, so on. But actually, it's a meditation. That dhyan, or that meditation, is actually imbued with transcendental or spiritual energy. So when it descends, when you actually participate in it, spiritual energy is actually descending, and like light does to darkness, is displacing the illusory narrative and is illuminating the actual narrative of the soul. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he wrote one song called Guru Astakam. You're familiar, most of the devotees are familiar with it, and I'll explain as we go along. But in this song, from beginning to end, in 8 verses, he gives a whole narrative from beginning to end of the soul's unfoldment. So he begins, Sangsara dhava navalida lokatranaya karuna gana ganautam. He said, every soul in this world is caught in a forest fire. What is that forest fire? It's a combination of their desires versus the imminency of time with the threat of death, because nothing in this world is forever. So the friction of those two things, the attempt to fulfill our desires, and the friction that comes from the fact that this world is temporary, that causes a fire. That fire is compared to like a forest. If you wanted to put out a forest fire, even if you have an ocean of water nearby, an ocean of salt water nearby, it'll be very difficult, because you cannot wholesale lift the ocean and bring it to the fire, nor can you wholesale pick up the fire and douse it in the ocean. But if by the grace of God clouds form and they absorb the water of the ocean, and the clouds travel over that forest fire and begin to rain, that way the forest fire can be put out. But the amazing thing is that when a cloud evaporates water, what happens to the water in the cloud? It also transitions and becomes fresh water. When a cloud evaporates water, right, it becomes fresh water. Because if you put salt water on a burn, what happens? So now that water becomes fresh water. So when it rains, that fresh water not only extinguishes the fire of the suffering of the soul in this world, but it also feeds anything that's possible to grow. So what's possible to grow from the soul? The actual real identity and the actual nature of love is possible to grow from the soul. So that fresh water of the mercy obtained from the ocean allows the soul to then begin to grow. Then he says, Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Paditramadya Manasora Sena. The person who brings that fresh water, that cloud of fresh water, is Guru or mentor. And that Guru, his own absorption is in the mood of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whom I spoke about earlier. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is considered to be the incarnation of mercy. If you were to take mercy and put it in persona, this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the Guru is considered to be a manifestation of that mercy also. So when the Guru rains down that mercy, the Guru's kirtan, the Guru's Harikatha, that is like the fresh water coming down from that cloud. And the Guru, he is himself absorbed in tasting the mellows or the moods of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Being absorbed like that, what he speaks imbibes that mercy also. So that mercy comes on to the souls in this world. Then,
I'm sorry, can you run through that again?
Yes. Outstanding. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is considered the form of mercy itself. The Guru, like a cloud, has taken water from that ocean of mercy. And that fresh water, which has been absorbed by a cloud, is now raining on the forest fire of the soul's existence in this world. When that water comes down, it not only has the ability to extinguish the fire, but it has the ability to nourish the potential for growth in the spiritual paradigm. Right? So now, the Guru being absorbed in that mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he brings the disciple or aspirant along with him and begins him to show him the process of how the real narrative of the soul works, the real identity and the real functions of the soul work. The real nature of the soul is divine service to God, to the masculine, feminine polarities of God. So it says Sri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Sringaratan Mandira Majanaru. He shows the disciple how to serve Radha and Krishna by dressing them. So here though, the word, and this is more for those who are in the practice, here the word Sri Vigraha has three meanings. One meaning of Sri Vigraha is Sri's Vigraha. Sri here means Radhika. So he gives indication of the identity of the soul by saying those souls who have the power to dress Srimati Radhika's own form, these are only Manjaris. So I'm speaking now for those who are familiar with the process. So Sri Vigrahara. Sri Vigraha also means that at that time of morning, Radha and Krishna are together. This is Nisant Lila. This is the early morning hours. They're together. When they're together as one form, it is also called Sri Vigraha. Understand? When Radha and Krishna are together, it is also Sri Vigraha. Lastly, when Radha and Krishna completely come together in what form, they take the incarnation of?
Mahaprabhu.
Mahaprabhu. So in the Gambhira, Lalit and Visakha in the form of Ramananda Roy and Swarup Damodar are also decorating Sri Vigraha with the kavya or poetry of Jayadev Goswami, Gita Govinda, etc., etc. So here Sri Vigraha has three different meanings. Chatur Vidai Sri Bhagavat Prasad Swadanatriptam Hari Bhakta Sanghan. Then Guru says, oh, by the mercy of this service, you will be able to taste Chatur Vidai, 4 kinds of Bhagavat Prasad. So normally we say lick, chew, drunk, suck, like this, right? These are the 4 analyses given. But what is the real meaning here of 4 types of Bhagavat Prasad? Krishna has 4 special features. Leela Madhuri, Venu Madhuri, Rupa Madhuri, and Prem Parika Madhuri. So any devotee who's doing divine service under the guidance of Guru to Radha and Krishna, they will become successful in tasting the 4 types of Madhuri of Krishna.
Madhuri means sweetness.
Madhuri means sweetness. And here Madhuri, the actual definition is given, Madhurya Chestanam Savasto Akilasto Charuta. It means something that is sweet all the time. Like the example is given, if you take certain kinds of, I don't know what, like a date. A date is something that if you bite it in the bottom, you bite it in the top, you bite it wherever, sweetness comes out. So really the definition of Madhurya is that Krishna is sweet in every aspect of everything. This is the real definition of Madhurya. So he says, by serving Radha and Krishna like this, 4 types of Bhagavat Prasad will be tasted. And Tripta means the devotee becomes completely satisfied. The devotee becoming completely satisfied means now, having accepted the reality of the spiritual narrative, having been now induced into the service of Radha and Krishna, their real identities begin to manifest. So now Gurudev can gradually begin to reveal his actual identity to the disciple. So Sri Radhikaya Madhavyorapara Madhuja Lila Guna Rupananam. So now Gurudev is showing my actual absorption is in Sri Radhikaya Madhavyorapara. So in the enchanting pastimes of Radha and Madhava. So here I'm speaking a little bit also for those who are familiar with the practice. So why the words Radha and Madhava are used? Why Radha and Madhava? Madhava means what? Madhava means the husband of the goddess of fortune. This is the actual meaning of the word Madhava. So why Radha Madhava? Because any goddess of fortune resides in Vrindavan? Not any goddess of fortune.
Radha.
Only
The head
Radha.
of all goddesses of fortune resides in Braj.
Radha.
Shrimati Radhika,
Shrimati Radhika.
she is the source of all the goddesses of fortune. Plus, no one's fortune can exceed Radhika's. Even Lakshmi is doing austerities in Belvan in order to get the position of the gopis. Therefore, whose fortune is greater? Radhika's fortune is greater. Therefore, husband here doesn't mean swakiras or wedded love. It means that Radhika is most fortunate because she is Vasikari, the controller of Krishna. Therefore, when Radhika takes the mood of the absolute control of Krishna, she is called Swadhina Bhatrika Nayaka. It means that Krishna is willing to do her bidding. And when Krishna is willing to do her bidding, he is called Dhira Lalit Nayak. So therefore, this verse, Sri Radhika Madhavyarapara, refers to Gurudev's absorption in service to Radha and Madhava in the mood of a Sakya Manjari. Yes.
Can you just say something about how all of this stuff that you're saying and all these Sanskrit words that some are familiar with? Because I have been many years now in this world of devotees. And I would come away sometimes feeling like, I don't have any idea what just happened. But there is a penetration of frequency and vibration and sweetness Harikatha brings like a medicine for the heart, for the soul. So even if we're not fully understanding everything and all the things you're saying, it's like bathing in something high that's very healing.
Exactly, because actually, this is the power of Harikatha. Harikatha touches the soul because we talked about once the false narrative is broken, first we want to establish that the illusion is a false narrative and we're absorbed in it. So first, by understanding that a little bit, then by hearing Harikatha, it nourishes the transition from the false narrative. And we don't always, like, I have no idea about many of the healing arts. But I know when the body is in dis-ease, that the processes that take place, though I'm not understanding them, they're having the efficacy of healing. And that's what happens sometimes in spiritual dynamics. That always the intelligence doesn't grab it. The mind does not grab it.
But
the soul is grabbing
it's like
it.
absorbing like a sponge. That's what happened
Exactly.
to me. I would leave these retreats and I'd go through all these stages of frustration and boredom and
What is
anger
that? What
and
is it?
I'm not doing that and all this stuff being purified, right?
Right.
But at the end, when I come out and try to go back into the illusory or real world, I'd be like, I don't want to be here. I want to go back.
Exactly.
Talk more about Radha and the honeybees and the bumblebees.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the actual nature of the soul, that dimmer switch that I talked about, it starts to become illumined. And once it becomes illumined, then you begin to see things in the false narrative that, oh no, I'm not going there anymore. In the darkness, those things were fine. But as the switch begins to come up and the light begins to illumine that darkness, then, nope, not the same thing.
But I also noticed what she is saying. I also noticed that we ingest the knowledge and it becomes part of our being, which means that we think that we didn't get it because we didn't understand it when it came in, but it rises up.
And it makes you want more, it makes you get curious.
Exactly.
But it also, it rises up and it becomes available.
Yes.
It's like sometimes someone calls on it and we can speak it
Yes.
because it has taken root.
And there's also the learning mode. Like I know for sure if you were studying acupuncture, during the learning phase, if you're asked to repeat something, you're asked to do something, it's difficult. Once the knowledge has been digested in your own time, sitting back, that knowledge becomes digested, then it comes out again as digested knowledge. When it's processing knowledge, it's different. So that's the necessity to understand, especially in communicating Harikatha, because Harikatha is not really of this world.
No, it's totally.
Harikatha is not really of this world.
When I sat in front of Gurudev the first time, I thought he was going to give instructions of how to live life. He was, but it was all about, and Radha and Krishna and the bumblebees, and I'm like, wait, how are you going to tell me about my anxiety or something? And he was just doing Harikatha, but the sweetness was like honey.
If I told, I'm just going to come 1 second. If I told that there is no misery and nobody suffering in this world, could we accept it?
Probably not.
I can prove it. So I'm going to take you guys for dinner. First, I'm going to do that before we go on.
I think you should explain what Harikatha is,
Harikatha-
because they may not know.
Harikatha means the transcendental sound that we talked about earlier. We mentioned that sound has different frequencies. And within the world, the frequency of sound goes up to a certain level, and then it has no efficacy to deal with your soul. It can only be knowledge or information. Harikatha has the power, as Didi was just saying, to penetrate the intellectual and the mental facility and actually touch the soul. So even something that's not digestible intellectually at a time comes back out as illumination because it touched the soul. It can happen a week later, it can happen a month later, it can happen 10 years later. But that thing actually comes back out as an illumination of, oh, I remember hearing this, and oh, I connect this dot with this dot, and a whole sort of unfoldment takes place. Because for years, you can imagine that devotees were going and they were hearing these things, and it's like, okay. Even those who had been experienced in bhakti, right? When Guru Dev was speaking, even those experienced. What? Okay. All right, it sounds good. Or I have faith. I believe you. Right? But functionally speaking, I can't make heads or tails. Right? But then, after practice, because now we're talking about the dhyan of the morning program, after practicing with this kind of emotional investment, because anything you do that you don't have emotional investment in also doesn't produce an effect. So by practice with emotional investment and hearing it, the two things come together and they produce the efficacy that it's meant to have. So let me go to this point about suffering in the world. Is there suffering in the Atma or not?
In the soul?
Yes.
No.
Then where does suffering come from?
Pure center soul.
Huh?
It's material. I mean, it's.
If the suffering is material and the soul is spiritual, am I suffering or not?
No, your ego I is.
But remember, this is
Your
why I
false
gave this breakdown.
identity is.
Remember I gave this, and this is great, the discussion part.
Yeah.
In the beginning, remember I mentioned how Maya gives first? Asmi.
Asmi.
I am.
I'm somebody.
I am.
Aham kara. I am the doer, and now you just bought the credit card of suffering. You know, you get a credit card in the mail, and it says you have $20,000, but you don't read the back. When you flip it over, once you flip it over, and you see the small print of the percentage rate, this, right? You just signed your life away practically, right? So it's the same thing with Maya. She offers us me. You don't have an identity because I mentioned all the souls are neutral, right? So then Maya offers an identity, Asmi. Then she says, here's further clarification of that identity. Aham kara. You are the doer and the cause of everything going on in your drama that you see being played out by material energy. Soon as you buy that narrative, you've also bought the consequential suffering. Understand? You
Bought the interest that comes with it.
You bought the interest that comes, you bought the consequential suffering.
And is that the part where at the moment the jivas are created and there's that line, some glance this way and some glance that way, that Maya, that they don't buy into Maya's credit card and they go, no, I'm going to go.
All jivas, there's two situations for the jiva. Anadi, remember that word I used, anadi?
Jiva means soul.
Jiva means energy, actually. Atma is the person. So you're an Atma. What you are composed of is called Jiva Shakti. So we frequently use the words interchangeably, like Jiva or Jivatma.
Right.
But you are an Atma, you're an Atma, everybody's a separate Atma, composed of Jiva Shakti, composed of the energy called Jiva. Now, you just mentioned something. The line and looking everything doesn't happen. This was an expression to give an idea of the nature of being neutral. The verse says, Anadi, avidya, yuktasha. The connection of the Atma with conditional life is Anadi. There are other jivas whose connection with transcendence is Nitya. They're called Nitya Siddha. Their perfection is without any beginning. Our conditioning is without any beginning. But in Vedic philosophy, the word Anadi means something that has no beginning, but it has a end. When is the end? When that transcendental sound comes in, breaks the absorption in the mundane narrative, that then begins your spiritual sojourn. But the Atma itself is not material. Asango Yanyam Purusha. It never touches material energy. So earth, water, fire, air, and ether, the mind, the intelligence, and its false sense of identity comprise like underwear and an outer garment on the Atma. The Atma vicariously looks at the Chitta, which is like a big flat screen TV, as I mentioned. The three modes of nature, they're showing a movie. What's the movie this time? Mukunda. You were formerly in high school, then you went to college, then you met a girl, then you got married, then you did this. And they're showing that movie. And we're looking at that movie, giving the emotional investment into it, and vicariously experiencing, I suffered, I did this, I was happy, this, that, this. You understand?
Yeah.
So then we take that drama until it ends. Then by the karma of our activities in this life, the drama begins. So it's like binge watching.
And it's more like an interactive video game.
Like interactive video game. But then, at the very end, all of the activities that we've built up, they begin the same cycle again. We sit back and we watch the drama again, identify with it. Until the divine sound that we talked about breaks the absorption. And as soon as the absorption is breaking, it's like, okay, what? What's going on? And as soon as those two questions get asked, then begins this flood of information. What am I? Who am I? What is Harikatha? Well, what is the soul? What is God?
And then you can have many incarnations back on this earth, but in that consciousness, or do you just go and
No,
never come back?
it depends. You can, in the beginning of your enlightenment, there will not be enough fuel to go.
Oh,
there may be several incarnations of fueling up for the journey, to use the same metaphor.
To never return here.
Right, and the never return means the material world is also according to vision. If Krishna and Krishna's whole Leela comes here, is it the material world or the spiritual world?
Spiritual world.
So what is here and there?
It's all one.
It's the identification. Is it? Or if Gurudev is here, is he in the material world or is he in the spiritual world?
He's in both.
Huh?
They won't
Wasn't
know
he
what
in both?
Leela is.
Leela means a pastime. A pastime. It means like a pastime or an activity when God descends to this world. We call it a Leela. So
Talking of those Leelas is also
it's Harikatha. When you talk about those Leelas, it's Harikatha.
Really in the body.
So it's possible that from one life to another, a certain amount of energy may be gathered, and finally when the energy is full enough, it is possible then to elevate and to obtain the full illumination. Until that happens, we continuously cycle, but whatever is gained is not lost. So if we make 10 steps, those 10 steps come right back with us. 15 steps, 20 steps, 30 steps, and it keeps going like that. It's never lost. Even if a person tries to lose it,
That's
you're
awesome.
haunted by it.
Even when you make like what feels like backslides in a lifetime or mistakes, or you had a really holy past life 500 years ago, but now then you were this and this, and now you're kind of more spiritual again, but then you screw up a little, but then you're devotional, like you still go forward.
So it's like a bank account.
It's a bank account.
You know.
Except the difference is,
but there's no
whereas in a
glory.
bank account, there's never any loss.
Right.
Never any loss. Whatever you do in bhakti,
Savings account.
Savings account.
But we
Savings
might
account.
be unconscious of it for
It can even be unconscious. For many, many lives, it can be unconscious.
Unless you commit.
Unless the only way is if you commit a grave offense to someone. Right. In that case, like it's like being wiped out. Your account.
Go directly to jail.
Yeah, right. Go directly to jail. Do not pass go. Right.
As long as it's conscious.
As long as well, conscious, even unconscious, we'll have to be mindful.
We have to be mindful if we're unconscious, but it's not the same.
It's not the same as to consciously commit
Ignorance
opera.
doesn't have the same cost as conscious
No,
choice.
not at all. Not at all.
Just
So like
be
this,
thankful for it.
hearing this type of kata, it does penetrate to the soul. And this is what causes the fuel, or this is what causes the spiritual energy that becomes the means by which the soul can then obtain its original consciousness. Right? But our sojourn here has been from time without beginning. But we're all fortunate because somehow the false narrative has been broken, and now we're in the phase like this.
Oh yeah.
You understand? We're in that phase where sometimes you got to look back this way, then sometimes you look this way. And so for us, the biggest thing then becomes creating balance. How to create balance. So this was part of my discussion tonight about the idea of creating a mood where we can incorporate the practices as sort of a means to balance our lives. So like for instance, this whole idea of the morning program, the way I was describing the prayers. A person can meditate on that in the morning, even if you can't go somewhere and practice that. You can begin that meditation. That I was actually by the mercy of my mentor, I actually received divine information. I was actually taken away from the false narrative. Who is my mentor? He's a person who is a manifestation of the mercy of this Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What has he done? He's engaged me in the divinity of service to the masculine and feminine polarities of God, Radha and Krishna. And now he's also shown me what is the sweetness of that taste. Because everything is done by attraction. I remember a long time ago, I was working, and there used to be a gentleman who would sit out in front of the metro station in DC, and he would smoke, just like chain smoke. Then I didn't see him for 3-4 months. Then, not 3-4 months, it must have been longer than that. Then I saw him again, and he had had a tracheotomy. So apparently he had cancer or some damage. But he had a cigarette.
No.
Oh my God.
Unbelievable. This was unbelievable to me, right? But I realized then, people don't function on what's best for them. They function on what's most tasteful or enjoyable to them.
Yeah.
You understand? So even we go against, huh?
Or familiar.
Or familiar. Yeah. In many cases, though, what is most attractive?
What
So-
they believe is helping them escape from their suffering.
From their suffering. Exactly.
Shreyas, not Shreyas.
Prayers, not shares.
Yeah.
Right. Or the idea becomes, even when people commit suicide, are they actually committing suicide or they're looking for happiness?
They're looking for relief.
That's looking for happiness, because the nature of the
Lack of
soul
suffering.
is ananda. This is the nature of the soul. So when the atmosphere becomes unbearable for the soul, this appears as an alternative. That's why the key to understanding that actually no one is suffering, that actually the Atma does not have suffering in it. Therefore, this knowledge is invaluable, because simply by that conscious paradigm shift, if people could understand, I'm not suffering, it's my vicarious identification with where suffering exists that's causing this. But that's it's not an easy thing, because it's not intellectual. Therefore, it's mentioned, it cannot be done alone. Because even if somebody tells somebody, hey, you know what? No, you're not really suffering. It's just all in your vicarious identification. So until a person who is empowered with spiritual energy comes, and that person begins to reign in their words the efficacy of spiritual power through their words to the soul, then the ability to functionally break those attachments begin. And as they begin to break, the freedom from that gives a sense of relief. You can take a deep breath. Then from that deep breath, a taste comes. Listen, just breaking the suffering alone was so blissful. What to speak of advancing more and more and more in spiritual life? Then somebody takes up the practice or the process of sadhana. It may not always be in the tradition of Krishna consciousness, but they take up the practice of a sadhana. Sadhana means a practice. So for instance, in Islam, to do prayer 5 times a day, to follow the hadiths, the spiritual scriptures in the mode of practice. If you're in Christianity and you're doing the rosary every day, right? Or you do meditation every day. A sadhana of a daily practice that fuels your further development to divine reality away from illusion is called a sadhana. So I was explaining the process of sadhana and Krishna consciousness, that the morning program, along with Guru Astakam, everything, is actually a dhyan. It's not a formality or practice. You understand the difference? Dhyan means a meditation. Right? So when you begin singing Guru Astakam, the absorption in that meaning of each thing is a emotional investment that you make. I am actually there with Sri Guru, and he's guiding me step by step, like guided meditation, through these different stages of unfoldment. Finally, I was on the 6th verse of it. In that verse, he says, Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhai. So Guru at this point then says, my disciple has followed me, has rendered service, has understood the worshipful objective is Sri Radha and Krishna. Now, Guru Dev reveals his own identity. Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhai. He reveals his identity as an intimate, perfected servant in the Nikunj to Radha and Krishna. This is the meditation in this song. The disciple seeing that, he becomes overwhelmed, she becomes overwhelmed. Boom, and they faint. They wake up from the fainted stage, and down here, back on earth, they say, "Oh, Sakshat Hari Vena Samashta Shastra." All of the scriptures have proclaimed this, but now I saw it and realized it when Guru Dev revealed his form to me. So the 7th verse is a declaration that what all of the scriptures had said, Shamasta Shastriya, this reality was shown to me by the mercy of Guru Dev when he revealed his own Swarup.
Can we sing that song or only at 4:30?
Anytime it can be sung. But singing it during that
That's
time, during the Brahmanic hours, that's the song. Sangsara Dava
Nidaloka.
Oh,
Yeah.
That song.
okay.
Then at the end it says, if one will worship the Guru, Trisandyam, the word Trisandyam means at 3 periods of the day. So for years and years, devotees thought, during 3 different times of day, I will chant my Guru-given mantra, and in this way worship the Guru through 3 periods of the day. But the meaning here is not at 3 periods in the day, it's throughout 3 periods of the day. Because at what point will you forget Guru?
Right.
You understand? So it doesn't mean 3 times a day, it means throughout the 3 periods of the day, sunrise, noon, and sunset, I should be absorbed in remembering what was revealed to me in those previous 7 stanzas. In the morning. The best time, because at the very last thing he says, Shrimad Guru Astakam Etarochai Brahma Muhurte. During these early morning hours, which is the most conducive time for meditation, if you will sing this with this meditation, it is guaranteed. So now he gives a blessing. And remember how powerful the blessings of pure, spiritually empowered beings are. So he gives a blessing if you will sing this during those meditative hours with the meaning, I am blessing you that you will obtain the goal of direct service in Vrindavan to your objective of Radha and Krishna.
But that feels like that's all you have to do then.
If you can do that and simultaneously give up the illusion. That's the caveat. That's the caveat. But embedded in the meditation is
Gives
the
you the
ability
power.
to do that.
Yeah.
You understand? So that's the morning dhyan. That's the morning meditation. Then the worship of Tulsi, the worship of Takaji, because when Takaji opens, again, I'm speaking a little bit now for those who are in practice. When the curtains open in the morning, then the devotee says, Mangala Shri Guru Gaura, Mangala Murati, Mangala Shri Radha Krishna. Now the curtains open. What Guru Dev revealed is his Swarup. He now takes you into Nikunj and reveals the roop, the forms of Radha and Krishna during that time.
I still think you can kind of explain a little bit.
That part is a little difficult to explain.
You explain it. You explain
You
it.
explain.
Okay, so this is really just the material covering of the Atma. This is not our eternal spiritual form. And everyone has an eternal spiritual form. So when we are, I guess, worshiping Takaji, Takaji is another name for Radha and Krishna, our deities. We meditate on the sweetness of Krishna, how our Guru in his eternal form
Is serving him.
is serving him. And he's not looking like he is to us with our physical eyes. He's actually has a form that we will not be able to see until we have come to the point where we can realize who we actually are. And that's a little high. I don't know. Am I explaining okay?
It is not an easy
Doing
thing.
great.
I mean, there's some things which are
Yeah.
digestible.
Really esoteric.
It's esoteric.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
But not easy.
Not easy. It's
Yeah.
very subtle, but not easy.
Simple. It's simple.
In practice,
Yes.
not easy.
Yeah.
Therefore, we preface the class by speaking about the things which are most important to accomplish. To understand what is our actual nature versus what is in the false narrative. So that part I consider to be easier to digest.
But then the simpleness also, like Gurudev would take someone right off the street who was curious for the first time and say, just chant Hare Krishna.
Just chanting Hare
He
Krishna.
gave, when they talk about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that was an incarnation that actually gave the Maha Mantra to the world so that we could free ourselves from this mundane reality. And it's simple, and you just chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. That's it. That's all really you need to know. And then that develops
Will
a
unfold.
taste. It makes
That
you
will
want more.
unfold.
Yes, that's what.
That statement,
Sukriti.
that chanting Hare Krishna is that light with the dimmer switch.
Right.
Because as you chant it more and more, you're turning up more and more the illumination,
Right.
and gradually light becomes fully illuminated and everything is recognizable.
At the very beginning of that, it starts the taste. You
Yes.
develop the taste, and that taste
Yes.
turns into greed.
And then you start reading a little more, and then you start understanding it, and then you
And associating.
and
And
associating more.
It's
Yeah.
a slow process.
And gradually, you begin to oh, thank you.
Very sweet.
And see, if everything goes well, you'll get the blessings.
Right from the
And your heart becomes.
So yeah, let's talk amongst each other and do questions, and that way maybe more things will come out.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
Sing a
Just
song.
going back a little bit ways, but the obscure souls that everyone starts with, has there been some hypothesis as to why they're obscure?
The soul actually is the person, and that soul has a subtle covering, which is like the body that you have dreams in at night. It is called the subtle body. And then you have a body which is composed of earth, water, fire, air, and ether. So these two coverings exist on the soul to give it facility to function in this world. In the same way that if you wanted to go deep sea diving, you'd have to gear up with a wetsuit and with the proper breathing apparatus, because it is unnatural in our state as humans to exist underwater for a long time without having some mechanism to do so. The same way the soul, this world is not a natural phenomenon of the soul. Therefore the soul, yes, not home. So the soul gears up, for lack of a better word, the soul gears up with a subtle covering and a gross covering to express its karmic portfolio in this world.
So then the next life becomes, why would the soul come here?
Huh, this is the thing. The soul exists here as a way to unfold to its original nature.
It's like a springboard.
Like a springboard.
Kind of
Why?
right.
Why would it be like that? Because
Middle point.
the nature of the soul is love. This is the actual nature of the soul. Even in this world, love is a maturation process. It's a learned and developed maturation process. Though it's intrinsic to every human condition, it unfolds and matures as we grow older. So therefore we cannot say, for instance, the ability of a small child to understand mature form of conjugal love. It's not there. But as they grow older, will that happen naturally? Yes, right? Yeah, in most cases, yes. As a child grows up, they get older and older, their maturation takes place. Divine love is intrinsic to the soul. And as the soul lives out its karmic portfolio in many lives, it eventually comes to a point where it'll start to make the inquiry, by the very force of nature, it'll make the inquiry into its nature and to what is this divine love. When that happens, the soul starts unfolding and its real nature starts to manifest.
Okay, here's a question for you. So when I first came to Gurudev back in 2000.
But wait, one second.
Did he get
Yeah,
that?
is that satisfying? Because I want to keep the trail. I don't want it to be unsatisfied.
So then the hypothesis becomes that the soul
It's okay, she can take
she can take it here, which is why it comes here.
This is like the best college, because here, once the experience takes place, here, there becomes perspective when it's realized. Because now you have the two things to look at. And now you, like, when people become vegetarian, people previously may have been eating meat, flesh, etc., right? They become vegetarian. A certain perspective is there if you had previously eaten meat and now become vegetarian. You understand? The taste has shifted, right? But there's also a deep perspective on, all kinds of things, the nuances of energy involved in the killing and so forth and so on. all kinds of things unfold in that transition. And now, because of that perspective, the conviction to one thing over another becomes stronger as well.
It's an embodiment.
It becomes an embodiment.
What I wanted to speak of does time.
Okay.
So when you're ready.
Okay. So that's a little bit. So why being here is because this gives a good perspective to what is realization versus what is our conditional life. So now you'll be able to see the two in illumination. You can see the two things side by side. Right? Just like, how do we know what is the nature of light? What's it compared to? Darkness. Right? The absence of light, darkness, makes light understandable. In the same way, having been in the darkness of ignorance regarding the soul, allows the soul's illumination to now have a deeper contrast. This is darkness, this is light, this is illumination, that contrast is there. Now there are very subtle things to, for instance, almost like, why do bad things happen to good people ideal? Why is the soul here in the first place? This also becomes a little esoteric, because we have to understand that the world doesn't revolve around us, but we are part of it. So there is a bigger picture. In the bigger picture, right, there is a God. And in that bigger picture, God is personal. And in that bigger God being personal picture, there are desires of God. In the desires of God, one desire is that there will be varieties of what we call leelas or pastimes. One pastime or leela of God is called Srishti Leela, which means this world. Now this is why I prefaced the whole class by saying, actually, when you look at things in retrospect, did I ever actually suffer? Did I ever actually suffer?
No.
And there is one. What I wanted to say about that was when we talk about the purpose of being here, an experience that I had, and it may not be pertinent, but it might, is to experience that separation, and through that separation to develop that yearning. Because when we come into association with the godly personalities, like our Gurudev, that gives us that contrast, but it also teaches us that we've looked away, and it develops, helps us develop that turning, which is turning towards. And without that separation, without that yearning, we don't develop that taste and that greed.
Yes, that becomes in a little more advanced stage when they can understand what this separation from Guru becomes the fuel separation from Gauranga.
But that's the
Just
first
feeling
thing I
empty and
experienced.
sad.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
That's the
separate.
first thing I experienced. I met Gurudev, and then I was physically taken out of his association
And you
for
feel
a few
separation?
hours, and I just wailed.
That's because this is the first time we've actually experienced love. All love in this world can only have quality up to a certain extent. The first time we experience love and divinity is when we meet Guru. That's the first time. So I just wanted to make sure everything was clear. Why is the possibility that souls can exist here? Because the entire world does not revolve only around us, but there is another consideration. Just like we've come to have a program here, so there are considerations that Nimai Chaitanya Guru has an office here, so forth and so on. So our existence here also has to take into account those realities. That himself and his wife have a practice here, have a business here, right? So for instance, we could say, I think it would be a great idea to have like a bonfire. Bonfires are fun, right? But
Lots of wood around.
Lots of wood around. But the consideration would be that I have to accommodate the person who is the, relatively speaking, we're talking about the proprietor of the space. In the absolute sense, God is the proprietor. So we have to account for, well, if I'm here, why am I here in relation to what was God's desire? Now that becomes a whole thing to try to digest. Well, does that mean God sent me here for me to suffer because I, right? You start thinking, but then we back up and again we go back. Did I ever really suffer? Did the actual soul ever really suffer? If the soul didn't suffer, then actually this whole thing was now, her point becomes super pertinent. It was a means of developing love.
Yep.
Wait, let me wait 1 second, sweetie. It becomes a means of developing love. You understand? Because now, through whatever trials and tribulations were here, we came to this point of turning towards spiritual life. The perfection of that spiritual life becomes the love itself with God. So now, once you're in love with somebody and you look back on all the trials and tribulations that you went through, you say, this all contributed to being in love. Even in the material world. You meet somebody, right, and you go through years of, we're together, we're not together, we're this, that. When everything finally gels and the relationship becomes very evolved, you look back on all the difficulties and you say what? All these things built the foundation of what we are now as a couple in love. So all the experiences here in this world build the foundation of what is love of God. Understand? So now when we look back on that, it's not suffering, it's not having been punished, it's not why was I here, it's now I understand why I was here. Now having experienced this divine love, now I know the whole purpose was to nourish and cultivate that, and now it's happened. Until it happens, the sense of I'm suffering, etc. plays out because I'm looking at the TV, the Chitta TV. Big screen, and I'm absorbed. Yep, here I am again. Another karmic portfolio unfolding. Right? Chitta TV, that's what you call it. I'm looking at it and I'm absorbed. Right? Oh, here I am now. In the next life, I'm somebody different. I become absorbed in that identity, and I'm going through all the karma from this life and that next one, looking at it. Wow. Going through the emotional investment in it. I'm sad today.
But does that happen if you're a devotee or you're Mukunda teaching us that? Are you still
now,
a Chitta projection?
Depending on the previous impressions that a devotee has, that absorption becomes more or less. Because every devotee is not at the same stage of unfoldment. So the devotee takes birth, and in the next life, in her life right now, the impressions of bhakti are so strong.
Yes.
It's not the same as perhaps I started interest in yoga and so forth at 18.
Right.
So I was 18 years prior that inflection of previous lives and not. That's exactly. Oh, yeah, now I'm getting blessings and everything. So it took 18 years maybe now for that previous impressions to kick in. For somebody, maybe 20 years, 30 years.
50 years.
In her case, at birth. You understand? So here's the manifestation of how it works. And it's confirmed in Sastra. Karmana Daivanana Trena Janto Dehopapatye.
Could you just say something more about the neutrality of the soul? I like what you said about how Jiva is the energy. It's an energy. Jiva Shakti is an energy. There's a soul. And there's that commentary by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati about, how the soul is neutral. Yes, that's so powerful. Can you say something about that?
Yeah, I was trying to balance because these things are so like.
Okay. He's smart. He'll pick it up.
He's gonna be. All right. So now.
Dude, he's super cosmic.
Because it's still difficult because.
Yeah.
Understand.
Yeah.
All right. So that thing of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that he wrote is a paraphrasing of Paramatma Sandarbha. Jiva Goswami, he took the commentary of Jaimatri Rishi from the Padma Puran that described the nature of the Atma. In there, he described that the Atma was Chit Ekarasanam. Chit Ekarasanam means he's conscious only of one rasa. But here, it does not mean rasa like a sthai bhav. It means that he has a neutral disposition towards God. Then he goes on to describe the subsequent reactions from that. As a result of being in a neutral disposition, Paratattva Jnanam Samsarga Bhava Maya. Then his knowledge of Paratattva Jnana, knowledge of God, who am I, and what is the relationship, is abhav. Abhav is a term in Nyaya, in Vedic philosophy called Nyaya, that means an absence. But it means an absence of something that will appear later.
An absence of Bob.
An absence, well, you can actually translate it like that, right? Abhav. But the grammar is actually a little different in Sanskrit, right? But as a play on words, that's an excellent thing to do, right?
I thought that's what you're saying, like Aveda.
Above means an absence of something that will appear later, right? So then he says the result of that, and what is it that will appear later? Swarup Shakti, right? Like in the verse, Suda Sattva Visheshatma Prema Suyangsa Samyava. when Vishuddha Sattva enters the heart at that time, the unfoldment of who is the Swarup of the Jiva, everything comes.
What's Swarup Shakti?
Okay.
Swarup Shakti means God's internal energy. It is composed of a Ladini and Samvit. Samvit means the divine cognition that functions in the spiritual world and makes it go. Ladini means the happiness, the bliss in the spiritual world. Now remember, the jivas in this world are Sat, Chit, and Ananda. That is not the same as Samvit, Ladini, and Sandini.
We had a question.
Well,
we were talking
I'm sorry.
Vishuddha.
Vishuddha, go
We were
ahead.
talking about Vishuddha versus Shuddha.
But I don't want to get too distracted though, because he's really right in the middle of this. Can we go to that
Okay,
afterwards?
I'll go back. So, when Swarup Shakti, which is composed of Sandini, Samvit, and Ladini, when that descends, it makes a natural, almost like magnetic connection with Sat, Chit, and Ananda. And they become Prayuj. Prayuj means one with no distinction. Sayuja means when you merge something, but both identities are still there. Like you talk about Sayuja Mukti, when people merge into Brahman. Still the identity of that jiva is there. It's just merged into the energy of God, and they experience no variety. Only the principle of Ananda. You
And it
understand?
does not eternally stay there.
And if they attain Brahma Sayuja, they'll evolve from there. If they don't, if they only become free from the material world, that you can't stay alone. So now, in the verse in Bhagavatam, Prayuja Mone Mayitvam, Prayuj here means that the Satchidananda Atma and Swarup Shakti coming from the divine realm, they come together, and Prayuj means they make a connection that's non-distinguishable. So the very spiritual body you have, right, when it unfolds, it manifests its eternal nature. This is why in the spiritual world there's no influence of time. That's why Gurudev and others have said the Swarup of the Jiva is inherent. Because from that perspective, it's eternal. There is no sense that it didn't exist. You understand? In the spiritual world itself, it is Nitya Vatman Kal. It means that it existed always.
It's circular, not linear.
The logic is circular. He is smart.
So I told you.
Totally. Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Smart dude.
It's not linear. It's a circular concept.
So that would even mean that those jivas who were bound in the cycle of birth and death and so forth attained their original spiritual consciousness. When they returned to the spiritual world, quote unquote, they were always there. They
No,
become eternal
no.
liberators.
Nope. This is what makes it difficult to understand. Within this world, we live within the influence of Prakat Kala, means material time. So we see things as past, present, and future. Right? So when the jiva obtains his Siddha Swarup, there is no time influence here. So the experience is that it always existed.
Right.
Right? That's a different thing from being here in Prakat Kal and saying it's already there waiting for me. That's not true. You understand the difference?
So the experience of it is as it's always been, but the actuality that
Because there's no
The
time.
actuality is that you've obtained it.
right.
Because there's no time there.
Because
So
there's no time there.
there's no consciousness
so
of
in other words,
time.
you will not say, when your Swarup manifests, you won't say, it happened on Wednesday at 4 o'clock. You know, or everybody will greet you at the docking station in Golok, right? Oh, hey, you just, right on, you made it. You understand? And they'll
Like,
timestamp
it
you.
just is.
It just is when you arrive there.
It is.
Exactly.
And it
even
doesn't
what
feel
you're
like you were
saying,
somewhere else before.
exactly what you're saying, Narada Muni said in Bhagavatam. He said that when he obtained the spiritual body, it was like lightning and illumination simultaneously.
But it also, it's like it erased everything that went before.
And he says that too. Rabdha karma nirvano anyapatat panchabodhika. When that happened, all of my karma and the panchabodhika, means the material body, was dissipated instantly, like simultaneously. But from this side of the fence, mind you, from this side of the fence, we have to obtain Swarup Shakti. You understand? So we cannot
Shakti.
say that the body is already
So
there.
we're still covered over even when we leave this material body and we go into another astral dimension that isn't Golok.
Right.
We're still covered over by some
By
kind
a
of
subtle,
consciousness.
by a subtle
body.
body. The same one that you have dreams in at night stays with the Atma until the time that the spiritual body comes. The spiritual body is the illumination that takes away the darkness of the subtle and gross body.
And that can take several lifetimes.
That can take several lifetimes.
Got it.
How many lifetimes we've been in now? Anadika, we can't even count.
I
But
buy it.
the word anadi itself in Yai means something that has a beginning, no beginning rather, but has an end.
Interesting.
As soon as you hear Harikatha, as soon as you hear Kirtan, as soon as you take prasad, as soon as any kind of bhakti touches you, that is the beginning of the end of the samsara gabha. Now, after that he says, because the jiva has an absence, in other words, it has not come yet, his spiritual knowledge due to Swarup Shakti, therefore, Maya Sarupa Jnananam. Therefore, Maya can place a covering on the Tatashta Jiva. So Maya places that covering how? Sattva, Rajas, Tamo, Jadane, Pradane. She takes the three modes of material nature and presents a false narrative, a false identity, and everything else. The Atma, which never touches it, sits behind the Chitta. Asanga, he Anyam Purusha, sits behind the Chitta, and by emotional investment, right, looks at the three modes of material. That's me.
So the jiva, because jiva is tatashta,
Yes.
has to connect with something.
No possibility to be in a
So that's what. So in that commentary, he's discussing how, in the beginning, he's a little bit attracted to the to the void or the impersonal,
right.
and because the impersonal is neither here nor there,
right.
eventually it turns
Exactly.
into material identification.
Exactly.
It can't just linger in the nothingness. Can't linger in the nothingness.
You're going up or you're going down.
Right.
Even if you stand there, the very nature of the operation of escalators is up or down. Now, remember that the discussions in Jaiva Dharma and the discussions of Bhakti Siddhanta are ontological discussions. They're not historical ones.
Mm-hmm.
So the jiva was never situated in one place, and then he came out, he looked over here, and then he looked over there. Because if you looked over there and saw the spiritual world, how would you come here?
Right.
Exactly. That's what I was saying. No, it's like
This is taken from the Brihad Aranyakya Upanishad. Bhaktivinoda Thakur clearly says in Jaiva Dharma in chapter 15, I use this example of being in one place and looking to both sides, or being like a fish that is going to both sides of a bank, in order to demonstrate the nature of being tatashtas, not to point out historical happenings.
Right.
This is called Arun Datti Darshan Nyaya. It means to take, like there's a star which is very small. So in order to show where that star is, you point to a bigger star and say, now look left.
So that's provisional.
That's provisional. So it's an ontological discussion. Ontological means to study the nature of something. So it's not a historical reality. It's an ontological study of the Atma.
But it does give information about even now when we are, if we are neutral towards Bhagavan,
Yes.
then automatically we'll
Maya
become
has
attracted to
influence.
Maya. Due to our neutrality.
Right.
So we can't, if we're neutral, then automatically Maya will come.
Automatically. And,
Yeah.
and this is at every moment.
Right. At every
In the
moment.
moments
Right.
that
By
that
default.
neutral
By default.
disposition takes place and not positive affection or affinity are present, then Maya has an, because that void has to be filled.
Right.
wow.
So the neutrality to spirituality, is this where, I'm just trying to conceptualize this, is this where choice comes in? Because you can, is this all about choice?
Yes.
It's also
Neutrality
about
gives rise to a choice. Right? Now,
So you can accept the illusion, or you can kind of give up.
or you
Go
can,
into
or
default.
like you're doing right now, you're making an inquiry. That inquiry is symptomatic of choice to question the narrative. You understand? The narrative. In other words, you can go downtown Boston right now. There's 1,000 people who won't have this. Millions of people, what to speak of thousands, who don't have this question. Because they have already accepted the identity imposed by the illusion, and that is a reality for them. That you're here and you're posing a question, but wait, does that mean all of these things are symptomatic that the absorption in the false narrative has now been broken? So now you will never be able to successfully go back into a complete absorption of material life, even if it appears that way. You'll never be able to have a complete absorption
satisfying.
because now the portal, so to speak, of consciousness has been opened, and that will constantly come back to remind you, what is this?
The seed has been planted.
Planted, that's it.
And get back to the original point of the ontological versus historical
Yes.
aspect of that whole equation,
Yes.
is that the choice of which way we're going to turn our attention has always been there.
Yes, he was trying to describe what is called Tatashta Swabhav. What is the very nature of the Jiv Atma? Because remember, the verse he's saying in Bhakti Sindarbha is Paramatma Vaibhava Gonane Cha Tatashta Shakti Rupanam. He's describing now what is the Tatashta Swabhav of a Jiva. He's not describing the history, he's describing this what is the condition. Because they can only exist in two states. What two states? Liberated or conditioned.
Condition.
So he described, he said, let's separate it, put it like in a laboratory and look at the nature of the Atma. So he says, Paramatma Vaibhava Gonane. Previously in Paramatma Sandarbha, I told everything. Na Devo, Na Naro, Na Tiyak, Na Stavro. He began to describe the entire ontology of the Atma. Every Atma is an individual. Every Atma is Anur, means he's atomic in size. Pratik Setra Ganam, every Atma is individual. Eka Rupa Swarupa Bhak, everyone is of one constitution and they are essentially spiritual. Right? He also described Chid Ananda Atmaka. Chid Ananda Atmaka means basically the Jiva is conscious and he has the potential for unlimited Ananda, but he is Dukkha Pratiyogito, means he has no dukkha or misery in his constitution. So Jiva Goswami in Paramatma Sandarbha, Anuched 19, he's already set up this whole thing. Then in Bhakti Sandarbha, first Anuched, he describes the sequence, which is what Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur paraphrased to show, well, how is it that if we're spiritual, how are we here? So he gave an ontological explanation of why you could be here, though you are spiritual.
Yeah.
Then he says, in Madhurya Kanda, meaning one verse is there, Sarva Sangamena Ratnya Anko Rupa Eva Mati. As soon as you begin to get sadhu sangha, the form of bhakti comes as mati. Mati means discrimination. Like Prabhuji just mentioned. What is this? Why is this happening? Well, wait a minute. Is this like those questions? They are called mati. And when that discrimination takes place, mati, the question arises. Well, if I'm not this false, who am I? What's going on here? And then that void starts to get filled by transcendental knowledge of a sadhu. And the sadhu says, oh, this is who you really are. Well, how will I realize that? Oh, you'll practice this. Then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, you practice it, but it's not easy. 27 different obstacles you'll have to navigate in order to get to the platform where your consciousness is steady enough to begin to perceive your identity. 27 different things means 4 types of four anarthas, 6 types of unsteady bhakti, 5 types of subtle mental obstacles. Getting over these things, you come to Nishta. In Nishta, when you hear, now in Nishta, the chitta is now placid, calm. It's not oscillating or vibrating with so many desires. Then when you hear Harikatha at that point, right? Tatad Baba Adi Mariye Shuti Dirapachite, right? Loba Utpatti Lakshanam. Greed arises in the heart because now what you hear stays on the chitta and vibrates right in the heart. This is called ruchi. Spiritual taste. Now when that ruchi comes, right, now you cannot give up. You only want to hear more and more the sweetness of the transcendental pastimes of Bhagavan. So then Gurudev will start to tell Harikatha by sweet pastimes. Because ordinarily, from the conditioned stage, if I tell Krishna one day, Nanda Baba was doing worship of his Narayan Shila. Mother Yashoda was making so many glubjamins for that worship. Krishna went in and he asked Mother Yashoda, oh Maya, is it my birthday? You're making so many nice glubjamins, everything, right? I'm smelling mine. No, don't smell, because before you make the offering, you can't. So don't smell anything. Dalbai, calling Baba, come, Maya's making so many glubjamins for us. These are not for you. These are for your Baba to offer to Narayan. Right? So Krishna says, but why? Why can we not take some and you give also some to Narayan? He says, no. Before you take them, Narayan has to eat them. So he says, go and task your father. He'll explain everything. So Krishna goes to Nanda Maharaj. Nanda Maharaj is setting up everything for the puja. Right? So then Dhanishta, she brings a whole thing of glubjamins and gives them to Nanda Maharaj. Nanda Maharaj puts them there and begins to make the offering. Krishna and Balaram are sitting next to him. He's ringing the bell. He becomes absorbed. He begins reciting all of the different prayers for offering. etc., etc. Then Krishna's sitting there looking. The globulins are entering his mouth, his eyes more and more. Krishna's mouth begins to water. Right? Then Krishna looks at the deity of Narayan, and it's a round Shila. So then Krishna thinks, wait a minute. We heard that Narayan had 4 arms. And he had a constant. This doesn't have 4 arms. This thing. I know what happened. Narayan ate so many globulins, he turned into a globulin. Understand? So now Krishna's staring at the Shila thinking, and imagine if he's eaten thousands and thousands of globulins, what it must taste like. So then Krishna's thinking like this, he became absorbed. He grabbed the Shila, put it in the mouth.
Whoa.
Right? So Nanda Baba finishes ringing the bell. He looks at Balaram and Krishna. What happened to the Shila? So Balaram, because he knows he's protective of Krishna, he steps in front. He says, oh Nanda Baba, you were offering these globulins for the sake of Narayan to be happy. So Narayan took 1 or 2 globulins and then he was happy and he left. And Nanda Baba said, no. Where is the Shila? So then Balaram told, he said, listen Baba, we're not the only family living in Braj. There are many families living in Braj. So so Narayan took 1 globulin here, he's gone next door. So he's going the rounds eating globulins. So I said, no. Where is the Shila? Where's your little brother? So he moves Balaram aside, he sees Krishna, he asks Krishna, where is Narayan? Krishna says, right? So then Hanuman knows. He takes it. Why would you do this? So he's drying off now. He has to do Abhishek every day. Why did you do this? He said, oh Baba, listen. Every day you're feeding Narayan all of these globulins. So I thought Narayan's eating all the globulins. Perhaps he became a globulin. So I became curious to taste what so many globulins would taste like in one thing. He says, come on. This is not proper. So then he said, but Baba, listen, I'm telling you the truth. When Gagarishi came here from Mathura, Gagarishi, when he was doing our naming ceremony, he told,
He's the astrologer.
Nandastu Atmajo Narayana Samaguna. That actually, myself, I have qualities, Samaguna, exactly like Narayan. So I figured, if I took the Shila and you gave me the globulins, Narayan would still be eating. So these kind of sweet pastimes, first, how is God doing this? You understand? How is God a small boy? All of that kind of digestion is incredible to get to first. You understand? But once bhajan practices set in, Nishta has started to come, and then when Ruchi comes, then any person in Ruchi can begin to taste. What to speak of pastimes related to the particular bhav that devotee is being nourished for. Like Bhagavad Gita, just one thing, like Bhagavad Gita. In Bhagavad Gita, who was bewildered? Arjun? Arjun was bewildered at the battle of Kurukshetra, right? So Krishna speaks Bhagavad Gita, right?
Mm-hmm. Supposedly.
Sava upanasado gavo dugda nandana gopala dugda partha vatsa sudhiya bhokta dugda gita amritam mahat. In Gita Upanishad, it's clearly mentioned there. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna became bewildered. Why? Because some years prior to that battle at Kurukshetra, Krishna met the Brijabasis at this very place during the Surya Grahan, means the solar eclipse. At the time that he met the Brijabasis there, Radhika told, please, you should come back to Vrindavan. Krishna told, don't worry. I'm always in your heart. You're always thinking of me. She told, Hridaya Moraman, Moraman Vrindavan, Moni Moni Eka Karijan. My heart is Vrindavan. My heart and mine are not two different things. Therefore, if you really want to show me mercy, you should come back to Vrindavan. So Krishna, when he came, after meeting the Brijabasis at Kurukshetra, from that time on, Krishna had never killed another demon. You look in Bhagavatam. He didn't kill another demon. Even when Duryodhana and Arjun came to Krishna about the battle, Krishna said, I'm not fighting. He said, one of you can have my army, the other one I'll be on that side. So Duryodhana, we know, took the army. Arjun said, oh, I just want you, Saka. So Krishna said, but I will not fight. So he drove the chariot of Arjun, but Gurudev said, if you were a chauffeur for a car, what do you have to do besides drive the car? You have to clean it, you have to keep it oiled, you have to keep it gassed. So Arjuna not only was the chariot driver of Krishna, but he took care of Krishna's horses. So Arjuna came one day and he saw that Krishna was stroking the neck of one horse and crying. And so he thought, what has happened? So what had happened? Lalita, there's one book by Rupa Goswami called Hansadutta. I'm not explaining this whole book, it'll be too long, everything. But here, Lalita has sent a message to Krishna through this swan, right? In that message, he told that Krishna, when you left Vrindavan, one calf that you had was very, very small at that time. But he was like your favorite calf. And you were waiting for him to grow up. But suddenly Akrura came and he took you away to Vrindavan. That calf has now grown up. But you know, that calf, and in her words she painted a picture, that calf now is all skin and bones. That calf cannot eat. That calf only looks in the direction from when you used to come. When you used to come to take the cows out. That calf was your favorite calf, and it had a unique feature. Krishna's, all cows have different features. They have different colors, and they also have different facial features. So among the facial feature group, there's one group called Mridangamukhi. Means they have faces like mridangas. Right? So Krishna was thinking about that message that came from Lalita. He was looking at that horse, and horses have a face similar, like mridanga. So looking at that horse and the color, he became overwhelmed thinking about this note from Lalita and began stroking that horse, saying, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry that I've left. So this was Krishna's condition outside of Braj. So seeing the Brijabasis at Kurukshetra, when he came back there some years later for this battle to take place, Krishna became bewildered being back in that place. Partha Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta. The word Vatsa means calf. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna used Arjuna in the same way that a milkman uses a calf to extract milk from the cow. He used Arjuna to do his catharsis of his separation from Brijabasis in code to Arjuna. That's Bhagavad Gita.
Whoa, wow.
You understand? That's Bhagavad Gita. Gurudev said Bhagavad Gita is on so many levels.
Yeah.
So Sarva Bhuyatam level of Bhagavad Gita is Krishna's catharsis in Parokshvad, means in code, about his separation from Brijabasis. In conclusion, he tells 1866, Sarva Dhamma Parityajya Mam Ekam Saranam Braja. Says Arjuna, I just told you about fighting all these different things, but don't worry about that. Both of us, we should give up our dharma, give up all these things, and Saranam Braj. In Sanskrit, Braj means to move, but Braj also means Braj. So we should give up everything else and surrender our hearts to the mood of Braj. Why? Because in Braj, there are those who have given up all dharma to serve me. Who else anywhere in Krishna's Leela has given up their dharma to serve Krishna? Has Mother Yashoda given up her dharma to serve Krishna? How about the Sakas? Have they given up their dharma to serve Krishna? Arjuna, Pandavas, they give up dharma to serve Krishna? Only, he told, right? In the Parayaham verse, he says, Yama Bhajan Durjaya Geha Shrinkala Samvishya. You gave up everything in order to do my seva, to love me like this. Therefore, Napareham Nirvaja Samyujam. I have no way to repay you. Yeyatamam Prabhajante, for everyone else I can repay. But for you, I cannot repay you. For this kind of love, I cannot repay you. So Krishna here is now repeating in a Geet. First of all, it's called Bhagavad Gita. Right? The gopis already had sung 5 Geets. Venu Geet, Pranay Geet, Gopi Geet, Yugal Geet, and Brahmar Geet. Now Krishna's responding in one Geet, Bhagavad Gita, by telling Arjuna how much he misses Brijabasis.
Amazing.
Later on, to Uddhava, he will also tell a Geet in the form of describing bhakti, devotional service. Then Krishna will have Mosala Lila. Mosala Lila means the end of Krishna's pastimes. Whole Yadu dynasty is gone. There's a whole pastime behind that. I'm not telling because it's late now. But now Krishna goes, he sits under one pipal tree. He becomes absorbed. In Bhagavad Gita, one verse is there. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavan tajayate ante kalevaram. Whatever you are absorbed in at the time you give up your body, kalevara, that thing you will obtain. What was Krishna meditating on when he left his body? Purva Vraja Vilasi Etina Vilasi. that I have 3 desires which remain unfulfilled in Braj. What kind of love does Radhika have? She Radha Pranaya Mahima Kaja. How does she taste those 4 Maduris I have?
And then Chaitanya came.
Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes.
So that
Now,
was his next life.
That's his next life. Now here's the thing. Krishna wanted to experience what is the mood of Radhika. But if he's absorbed in the mood of Radhika, tasting it, how will he know what it's like? Right. Therefore, he manifested another Kalavram. What form is that? Sri Jagannath. Therefore, he manifested the form of Jagannath to witness himself absorbed in the mood of Radhika.
Whoa.
Oh, right.
You understand?
Whoa, okay.
So
This
this
is Rath Yatra. Then the
Chaitanya.
form, then the desires of gopis are fulfilled. Because Krishna Vrajalana Jai E Bhavantra. The Rath Yatra is bringing Krishna back to Vrindavan. Now Krishna watches in ecstasy along with Baladev and Subhadra. How Krishna is tasting Radhika's moods and dancing happiness, bringing Krishna back to Vrindavan.
So Lord Jagannath was watching Mahaprabhu, watching himself
Why?
love Krishna.
Because he's absorbed in Radhika's bhav.
Why is Lord Jagannath and Subhadra, why are they so different face than the rest of the incarnations?
Because once in the apartment of Rohini, who was one of the wives of Vasudeva, who was sent to Braj to stay with Nanda Maharaj, when she came back, all of the queens of Dwarka were curious. What is so special about these girls in Vrindavan? So she began to tell about Vrindavan. When she began to tell about Vrindavan, Krishna was in the Sabha. Sabha means like a meeting hall, like city hall, for lack of a better word. And he's meeting with all the kings. But there's one verse. Naham Tasami Vaikunte Yoginam Hridayeshwa. Krishna said, I'm not in Vaikuntha in the heart of yogis, but wherever my devotees are chanting my glories, I'm in that place. So Rohini is a top-notch Brijabasi. She was describing Krishna and the Vrijabasis to the queens of Dwarka. Krishna heard that in his heart, not by ear, in his heart. He immediately took off and ran to that place. Knowing that Krishna and Balaram would come when she started talking, she told Subhadra, guard the door. Don't let them in because this is strictly female conversation. So Subhadra went to the door, and Subhadra put her arms up in the doorway like this.
It's Krishna's sister.
Listening. Krishna and Balaram came there. When they tried to come in, Subhadra said, no, ladies only. So then Krishna and Balaram stood by the door, and they all became absorbed in hearing about Vrindavan and Braj Katha. As they became like that, the transcendental ecstasies in their body began to manifest. So Krishna's arms began to shrink in. His eyes dilated. He had this huge smile on his face, absorbed in ecstasy. Narada Muni, who manages to always come at the right time, even I don't know if he gets a text or his Facebook post, somehow he always manages to show up at the right time. So Narada Muni then pops in, he says, oh Krishna, please, let it be seen what is your real nature about your feelings towards Brijabasi.
And it's that incredible
this form.
ecstasy face. And it's very black, dark.
Because there's bodily transformation, including Varna. Varna means the color undergoes transformation. So Varna means when your color. So now he says, please, Krishna says, okay, so be it. So when he was sitting under the pipal tree, in the last elements of his pastimes, he was meditating how to taste the mood of Radhika and how to witness it. So 2 Kalavrams he got, one as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and one as Lord Jagannath.
Wow.
Kalavram means body.
Wow.
This is mystery of Rath Yatra, mystery of Bhagavad Gita.
I just figured out Rath Yatra, I put it together. I'm so smart.
This is the mystery of Bhagavad Gita. But also Gurudev said, in Samanya Upakim, which means for ordinary people, it talks about duty. For those who are more advanced, in Guru, it talks about the difference between the body and the soul. More confidential is bhakti in general, how to do devotion to Krishna. Most confidential, Braj Bhakti. Most confidential, Krishna's catharsis about his separation from Radhika and Gopis.
Wow.
So one of my things I'm trying to get better is to be able to, in a mixed audience.
It's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy.
It comes in, even if we don't understand.
Exactly. Gurudev would say this all the time.
Krishna's arrangement.
Krishna's
Yeah.
arrangement.
Yes. Who's here.
Yes.
Yeah.
But everybody gets something. Just coming.
Okay,
Gets
so
something.
quick question. You mentioned 4 things at the beginning. It's me, Akara,
So, Asmita,
Asmita,
Rag, Dvesh, and Abhinavesh. These are the 4 features of avidya. So asmita means the false identity. Expansion of that is ahankara. An expansion of ahankara is called upadi, means a particular designation. I am the doer and controller of all my life. That's called ahankara. How? Here's an upadi for you. You can be Mukunda. You can be the controller. You can be this. You can be that. Right? So I get a particular designation based on my karma. That's called an upadi. Right? So then I live each life with a particular asmi, ahankara, upadi in that life. Right? Rag means attachment to the nature of pursuing the nature of my soul, which is ananda. So I'm looking for happiness in this world. Dvesh means the dichotomy, because I'm in this world, of trying to avoid misery. Right? Because I'm in the false narrative. Misery is part of the false narrative, not part of me. So I'm trying to avoid the misery and find the ananda. So that's Rag and Dvesh.
So the word would be aversion?
Aversion.
Yeah.
That's what's written in the scripture. That's the translation I gave.
Yeah.
And Abhinavesh means an inextricable absorption in it that can't be broken by my own effort. Therefore the verse says,
That's why we need mercy. The
only way to break that absorption is by someone who's Ganatva, means who's realized, and Ganada means disposed towards giving you that mercy.
And so we all have a samskar and a certain sakriti. So we can come back and move forward from a position of already having ruchi or something?
Not ruchi.
Not ruchi.
In the next life, depending on
That's
where
what I
you
mean,
have
in the
gone
next
to,
life.
that samskar will be there. Bhagavad Gita says, whatever little bit you've done, that becomes permanent.
So we
We're
start
just going to
at
end
that
in
point.
At that
if you
point.
can.
At that point.
At
So,
that point.
so if someone, say, immediately has a response to Harikatha or something like that.
That means in the previous life, that samskar, that impression was there.
So everything you achieve in one lifetime, it's tailored to your soul.
Exactly. Yes. From not, and even not just to the subtle body, but to your soul. It's not even tethered to the karmic body, which you carry from one life to another time. That carries your karmic portfolio. Right? You give up your gross body, but your subtle body stays there. In your subtle body is your karmic portfolio. So when you get to the next life, a body of earth, water, fire, and ether directly corresponds to the karmic portfolio in your subtle body. That gives you the gross body you have. But whatever you did spiritually is tethered, as you said, to the Atma. When it becomes mature enough, it dissipates the subtle and gross bodies, and the direct spiritual body is obtained. If that happens while you're still in this world, then 2 manifestations will be there. Seva Sarika Rupena Siddha Rupena Chatrihi. In this world, you have one body as a perfected sadhaka. That's what you mean that Gurudev has a body in this world. And you have another body which you've realized of your identity in the spiritual world. And you will go back and forth between these two. Whenever you're chanting, your spiritual body, your spiritual body will manifest to you, and you'll see your seva, service, connections, everything in that spiritual body. At the same time, when you're in external consciousness in your sadhaka rupa, it will appear as Sri Guru, as sadhu, etc. Doing sadhu. It is so late. I apologize.
Can we do a short kirtan?
Huh?
Short kirtan?
Short kirtan.
Kala, can you do a short kirtan?
Sure, of
I'd
course.
like to get on the bus.
Okay, now I'll make sure I get that number.
Okay.
Okay.
And your contact.
You do kirtan?
Do you want to do it? You want to
No,
leave
no,
it?
no. I have not. I didn't know DVD kirtan like Vibhuti. I can play Mandanga.
Yeah, let him play. We give him the mridanga? You want to play mridanga?
No. Play. You can play. You can play. Yes.
Okay, Hari Bol, everybody. Jai.